How do you balance confidence with humility?
By knowing when your shit stinks. That's a big phrase that I use all the time, and that's something that anyone who's ever worked for me will attest. And it's really about self-awareness and knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not good at, knowing if you know something. Like, there's always going to be times in our lives where it's like lying by omission. You know, have you read this book? And you don't quite say yes, but you don't quite say no, you know? But if you constantly do that, then you'll never actually end up learning new things. And sometimes it's really important to know what you don't know. So be confident in what you don't know. I think that's how you balance confidence and humility. I think, well, one of the first kind of moments, and I think I've spoken about this before in my career, that made me really understand that I was a producer as well as obviously an administrator and an educator and all that stuff, was when I convinced the Film Center that the Digital Media Lab, or Media Links Habitat at that time, needed to make stuff as well. Not just do capacity building for talent, but also actually internally do in-house productions, because in doing our own productions, we essentially, as the kind of deliverers of programs and stuff like that, have firsthand knowledge about what it takes to make these cutting-edge products. And so the very first large-scale project that we took on as part of our in-house production was called the Great Canadian Story Engine. And this was in the year 2000. This was pre-social media. This was pre-video on the net. This was Flash even, or Flash was just coming out, pre-broadband, no mobile phones at that time. But even then, we knew that the power of the internet was its networked capacity, and that there was going to be this big shift in terms of how audiences and creators were going to play with each other. And so the Great Canadian Story Engine was a prototype that we developed in one of our core interactive art and entertainment training programs. And this prototype kind of posited this idea that Canadians, your average Canadians, have stories that they want to tell online and share with everyone else. And so this was really the first user-generated content site in Canada before ZTV, etc. And so we went to the four members of the team who created this prototype, one of whom is Tessa Spruill, who's now head of interactive at CBC. For scripted and unscripted, and we said, look, we think this is the perfect Millennium project. Let's take, we'll license the content from you. You guys become the creative director and the producer and etc. And we'll co-produce with you this property. So we had everything teed up. And the board of directors of the Canadian Film Centre at that time, this was very new. This was the first digital media project that the Film Centre has decided to produce on their own or in conjunction with the talent that they've supported. And they said, okay, well, you must raise this much money before we can say yes. And at the 11th hour, I was $60,000 short. And Wayne Clarkson, so we had 3 hours before our board meeting. My co-producer Kate Halpenny and I were freaking out because we didn't think we'd meet it. And our executive director, Wayne Clarkson, who was a big fan of the idea, obviously, was saying, you know what, the board told you we needed to raise this money or they're not going to approve it. Like, there's nothing we can do. And so for 3 hours, I called every single person I knew and essentially made a deal. And we were able to raise $60,000 that day, and we were approved, and the rest is history.
In 3 hours.
Yeah. So it was one of those things where the kind of the believing in a project that you know has impact, has legs, will influence other things, and it has been a seminal website and large-scale transmedia project, although transmedia was not the term we used at that time, for many people. So that, the Great Canadian Story Engine influenced the creation of the BBC Capture Whales project. It influenced the StoryCorps, and now these kinds of story engine type projects are everywhere. They're almost ubiquitous, and they're really. And I think, in our small way, that was all this stuff that we see now was really influenced by that single project that these 5 wonderful talent that came through the lab thought of on their own, and then the lab itself had the ability to then take their vision and realize it.